Welcome to the Victress Podcast, where we discuss all things faith, family, and functional medicine. I'm Dr. Lisa Marino.
And I'm Erin Hazelbaker.
Today we're talking about stop controlling everything.
Oh, so hard, isn't it?
It's really hard as a mom. Yeah, and we're heading right into the school year, which is another maybe trigger for you as well, too. So many new things, so many uncontrollables. Maybe kids are moving away, kids starting school for the first time, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And all of us just kind of all the things that we think about, because not only is it, fall time, okay, then new sports season, but then it rolls right into, here we start into holiday season right after that. So,
yeah. And there's a lot to manage. I mean, there's a lot to be done. I mean, there's certainly something to be said about being disciplined and having things organized, but what happens when things get thrown, a wrench into them, right? So we want to talk about that, spiritually. It's certainly something that we love doing, how do we look at the saints and the Blessed Mother, and what would Jesus say, about that? And I think that honestly is a great place to start, because, ultimately there is a way to manage my family and run the household without sinning, without getting angry. There's holy anger, but without, sinning really is the bottom line. Without getting grumpy, you're frustrated, right? There's certainly a way to run the household and to not lose our interior peace.
Man, I am so glad Lisa wasn't at our house the other night, because we could just be talking right about me right now.
Sure, let's analyze you.
It's so hard sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So certainly it starts with a great day of, morning prayer. It would be wonderful every day, and morning mass would be wonderful, but there are certain times kids wake up in the middle of the night, somebody's sick, there's times where we just cannot do that. And so the bottom line is that it's charity, even over prayer sometimes, right? So obviously we keep to that schedule, we try to stick to that, but we have to be charitable, and we have to love ultimately no matter what happens. And so that brings us to really our first virtue of detachment, is that in all things, can I detach? Can I love first and detach really from the consequences, right?
Yes, and this one is so challenging too. I hear this and it makes me think, well, detach. Oh my goodness, let's think of all the things that I've connected myself to. So lately, just an example for us, we are trying to sell our house. And so what I've become really attached to, or I've noticed that I've become really attached to in that, is cleanliness above everything else, so making sure that we are always, ready to show, at any moment. And that has become something that I've had to really focus on myself. It's like, okay, my kids need me right now. I need to detach from this. Like, I know I have a sink full of dishes. They're going to still be there. It's okay. We don't have a showing right at this moment, but you can see how even at different phases in your life, 2 months ago, I wouldn't have told you that was nearly as high a priority for me as right now, and now how quickly that became an attachment for me, that I need to set this aside, because it's clearly, interrupting my ability to love, interrupting my ability to give, be charitable, interrupting my ability to even have a close relationship with God too.
Yeah, absolutely. And we see how it's a good thing to have things put away and organized, and you have a welcoming, inviting home for others. That is a good thing, but it does not, like you said, come, before being present for your kids. And certainly there's times where they have to be obedient, and
sure.
You are in charge, right? So there's certain times where you cannot always attend to them, and that's important,
right,
as well. But, is it taking precedence? Is it, stealing you, robbing you of your interior peace, that you cannot, detach from that, and really, be present with the Lord? And I think that what makes me think of is, Mary really being a contemplative, and what she would do is ponder these things in her heart, because we can't always figure out the situation. And I find myself kind of stumbling, because I'm like, okay, what should I be doing in this situation? And we almost do need to kind of flip, what the world says on its head, about having things organized and caring about what people think. Can I be a little bit more, slower with my thinking, and more in the moment, and more present, more contemplative, like Mary was, to just ponder on these things. Okay, Lord, where are you at in this situation? Where do you want me to do? What's your will here in this situation, that I can make the best choice, in the moment that I have, because things happen so fast.
Oh my gosh, yes, exactly. You know, the kids come up, or they're fighting, or, you know, something's going on. You know, you've got something that comes up with work, you know, anything like that. You know, for us, I know that happens sometimes where, you know, we will be focusing on our family, but we'll get a message from the office like, hey, you know, such and such happened. It's kind of an urgent issue. And I can almost feel, she can too, like a switch that flips, and it's like, you know, and then you kind of get distracted. You're not as focused on the things that you should be doing anyway. Yes, the problem needs to be taken care of, but I don't have to be uncharitable in that moment too. And that's where we both have worked really hard too on, you know, detaching ourselves from those types of situations as well, especially from, you know, from our work being our priority, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, you know, we want to look from the perspective, you know, of also humility, you know, being attached or tied together with detachment. So St. Teresa of Avila says that detachment and humility are inseparable sisters. So, you know, from that perspective, it takes a certain humility to be able to look at myself and say, wow, I am still so attached to coffee, or I'm still so attached to my phone or social media.
Sure.
You know, it's robbing me of peace, or it's lending, you know, that I'm not able to serve God, serve my family readily, I think is really the hard thing.
Oh, man. And so that's what Lisa and I end up talking about a lot of times with our patients. And mostly because it's so addictive. And you've heard us talk about this before if you've listened to any of our podcast episodes, or, you know, if you've been a client of ours at all, just how vital it is to detach ourselves from social media, especially from our phone, taking some time to do that. You know, in some people, it needs to be extreme. It needs to be a hard cutoff. Period. You know, you can't even say, oh, I'm just going to do 10 minutes. It's still so addicting that 10 minutes just keeps rolling into other things. And we understand that's how social media drives us. You know, they do this in a particular way. They put things up so that we continue to scroll. And we're, again, almost detaching ourselves from our life, but attaching ourselves solely to this social media. So super challenging, and something that we recommend to as many people as we can. And it's hard for us too, because, you know, yes, we do need to be cognizant and aware of what's happening, you know, on our social media pages, you know, if people are asking questions, etc. So I've kind of forced myself to do, okay, I'm going to do a morning check-in, and I'm going to do an evening check-in, and I am not touching it during the day, you know. So there's been different ways that we've both tried to manage that, but it's so tricky because it's so easy to fall into then that comparison trap, which is another part that, you know, we just talk about so much. That is the harm of social media. That is just a huge driver for folks, you know, especially anxiety, especially, you know, depression, comparing everything that we have, you know. Used to be, you know, even as recently as 50 years ago, you know, if you look back, life was not this easy. We didn't have time to do social media. And so we say, oh gosh, I'm so stressed now. And I understand that, you know, we feel a lot of stress too, but at the same time, even 50 years ago, you were still having to cook a lot more from scratch than you are now. It wasn't just an option of just like running out and grabbing something. You couldn't even just go grab a rotisserie chicken at the deli. You know, it was like, you know, you still had to do some work. And so what has happened over time too is just having that extra time then to compare ourselves with everybody around us. It's like, oh, you know, as so many people, again, going back to the comment about, you know, selling our house. Oh my goodness, you know, your laundry room looks so nice. And so then that sticks with me. I'm like, oh, I better keep my laundry room looking nice. Like they think that my laundry room looks nice. And it's so silly. But again, just that comparison of what somebody else is thinking, like, oh my gosh, Erin's laundry room is really pretty. And so then I get kind of stuck in that comparison too. Oh, I wonder if my laundry room's as nice as theirs. How silly. But things that we kind of get caught in and we don't even realize it, and then we kind of start spiraling down that path.
Yes, and so remembering to draw our attention, our focus back to God in all things. Again, it's good to have, you know, things that are put away.
A clean laundry room.
And well, to teach your kids to fold your clothes and have things, you know, nicely, you know, put in place. I mean, those are valuable lessons, you know, for them to have, but you know, to focus that attention, you know, back on God in those instances. So, you know, we just invite you to, where are those situations that I have the most trouble letting go of control or struggling with control. Is it my children? Is it cleanliness? Is it food? Have I gotten really attached to very healthy eating? Why does this bother me when things get off course? If it's a schedule, and just letting and just soaking in that trust, in God that He has the best plan for you. Mm-hmm. And usually what comes up are a couple things. There's usually a wound there that maybe you let go for a little bit and then something happened, that we put way too much trust in ourselves to have to figure it out, or that I'm the one that's gluing it all together. Yes, you're very important. Yes, there's a lot that goes on because of you, as a woman, as a mom. But God ultimately is in control. He's the creator, we're the, creation. And so, usually there's some sort of wound there that's happened in the past and I need to reconcile with, that I need to forgive myself. Maybe I messed up. Okay, that's the other one. Usually I've messed up and I need to forgive myself that, because I didn't control this and I didn't have this schedule, somebody got left, or somebody got hurt, or something went wrong, and that was my fault. So can I, recognize this is where detachment and humility come together. I have to be able to forgive myself and recognize I am fallen, I am broken, I'm going to mess up a lot. And can I let go of that and trust God? That's why we have, confession. That's why we have forgiveness being so, so valuable. Jesus said 70 times 7 over and over and over again, because we're just going to keep, continuing to mess up. So detachment and humility come together, and I need to be willing to forgive myself and have the foundational trust in God that He is going to put things in place the way that they need to be.
That I think is really difficult for me, and Lisa and I always like to give, real life examples. I know for me, especially with the kids, it has always been, something that's so hard for me, because we think like, well, we shouldn't, there are kids, like we have to hold them. We have to keep them close. We have to hold them tight. And so we think about like, okay, well, how do I detach from that? Because again, God's asking me absolutely to be their protector and caretaker. But at the same time, if my entire focus is, I need to make sure my kids are the best. I need to make sure that my kids are successful and that they get straight A's and helping with all these things. And we're trying to control all these different pieces. Are we really able to focus on God at all in that moment? I can tell you that with 100% certainty, every time that I've caught myself in those situations, I am nowhere near focused on God, in that moment. When I'm caring about which baseball team they make, or, which decision they make as far as school. Oh, well, are they going to be in the advanced math class or the, the regular math class? And so when I'm thinking of those things, it's like, well, yes, it's because I want to control those situations. I want to help with those situations. I want my kid to be as wonderful as possible. But at the same time, where is my mindset?
And then that spills over into them, because then the more worried that they are, the more I have to make this team, right? Or, I'm going to be left out. And when we have that interior peace, they, feel more free to not be afraid to mess up. Right. Essentially, right? And I struggle with that too, because it's hard. We don't want to see them fail. We don't want to see them mess up. We don't want to see them struggle. But that's where learning occurs, and that's where they can truly, learn to be themselves and figure out who they are, what they enjoy. We have that interior peace. It's okay. No matter what happens, that you've tried your best. And we know that sounds cliche, but it truly is. Have I been obedient to God, and am I teaching my children to care? Of utmost importance that I'm being obedient to God in this situation. And that usually means doing my best, being obedient to my parents, giving what I can. And so are those the lessons, and is that the focus that we have, from our household that will carry over into our kids?
Yeah, something I've prayed about for a long time, and I still, just kind of struggle with and I don't know if this will reach anybody also, but, one of the things I've struggled with on occasion is, I'll pray and I'll say, God, anything you need from us, anything you need from me, like wherever you need me, tell me, please let me know, what can I do? How can I help? But it's almost like my prayer stops at how He can use my children, because I'm scared of that. Well, what if I say, okay, God, yes, you can have my children, and it's almost like my prayer kind of stops there because I still want to be able to control that aspect of it. I want to be able to help them in any way possible. And I've forgotten that God's ultimate plan, is for the glorification of all of us, but especially, him, but then making sure that my children are coming to him. That is the ultimate plan, and so it's almost like I forget that he wants what's best for them. But it's a little scary to think about that. So I just invite you to pray about that a little bit, because that can be one of the things, especially in moms and dads. So if you have children, even grandchildren, we see this a lot too in grandparents, where grandparents are still really stuck in that cycle of wanting to, well, if I can help with this, or if I can help with this, instead of allowing them to see, like, you know what, they're going to mess up sometimes. You know what, I really need to just turn this over to God and say, okay, God, I'm going to help them in every way possible that is appropriate for you. So that doesn't mean I'm going to be sitting there doing their homework every single night. Like, no, that answer is wrong. Do it again. It might be that I allow them to mess up and get a C every once in a while.
Yeah, and that's really hard to.
It's really hard
lessons to learn. Try to control things. Absolutely. Yeah, and so I want you to think about and kind of reflect on, and this is where it kind of takes a little bit of homework, of even just sitting down, what are the situations that, rob me the most of peace, that I feel like I have to control, or that I get most irritable over?
Sure.
Why is that there's that irritability there? And I want you, to caution you, because you don't want to spend too much time dwelling on that. It's helpful because you can practically see, oh, it's not really, the schedule that bothers me. It's the fact that, I don't have, dinner ready to go, or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's my husband that's in the background that's saying I'm starving, and that happens every night. So, well, let's talk about some meal planning. Let's talk, so there's practical ways to kind of divulge that. Maybe you have a great friend. This could be a great coffee date type of thing. Pastor, somebody you have a great relationship that you can kind of sit down and work through this. But don't spend too much time, because that's when we get scrupulous. Mm-hmm. And that's a big problem, that we see as being scrupulosity. And so, here I'm reading from Father Chad Ripperger's book, Dominion. And he does talk a little bit about, demonology. And so, sometimes what we do is we get too focused, even on religious things, and too focused on trying to sort this out. So he says, this is also even the case with scrupulosity, in which a person spends an excessive amount of time thinking about himself and trying to sort out his sin, his spiritual state, etc., rather than focusing on God. Right. And so even we can get caught up, in trying to figure out, why am I not holy, and what was wrong with me, and how am I going to grow in holiness, instead of just trust and just pray.
Yeah.
And it's a hard thing, but it is a choice, and that
Right.
I think that's the hard thing, is like when you have that angst, and you just got to kind of sit with it in prayer, and it might take you 5 or 10 minutes to just calm that down a little bit and sit with it. What can I let go of? What am I still holding on to? Usually, like I said, it's going to be some sort of sin that maybe I had, or a wound, that I had, or what am I so attached to that I need to continue to practice, giving over to God every single day.
Yeah. Well, I think hopefully, your takeaways from today are, what are the things that I'm struggling with? What are the things that I'm still attached to? What are the things that I can take some time to say, okay, Lord, I'm going to give this over to you. We see this again so often with our folks that are anxious, depressed, that they get so hyper-focused on certain things and controlling things. And we all know that we can't do that. We can't, it's just going to happen, that things are going to happen. Dinner's going to get burned. Somebody is going to, get a B instead of an A on a paper. We get it. We understand that life just is not the way that we planned it out. Somebody's going to get in a car accident, heaven forbid, all those types of things. So we just ask you to pray about that a little bit, and just going to see, in what areas, again, every day it's something that I kind of try to focus on, like, okay, Lord, I'm clearly struggling with this today. I'm going to lift this up to you. So it might even need to be that for you too. But then again, making sure that we're not traveling down that path of, oh, I'm so focused on myself that I can't then focus on what God needs me to do.
Yeah, and just because I've, mentioned it and what you said, to reconciling with that, I should have mentioned, just the sacrament of confession. And,
Sure.
And maybe that's a hard one for you. Maybe you haven't been in years, or you never really understood why there is a sacrament of confession. it's because of these, the effects, even really physical effects of dealing with our sin, our mistakes, all of that, and God wanting to wash that away for you. Certainly we have to, there's a certain penance for that, living that out and being purified, but to have that mercy of God, instilled within us, I just can't recommend the sacrament of confession enough.
Yeah.
As often as you can, at least every 30 days is really what's best, more often if you can, but using that as a tool to help you overcome, forgiving yourself and moving on from mistakes.
Yeah.
Well, let's end in prayer. This is a prayer from St. Teresa of Avila. This was in her bookmark. So, so it's, it's valuable to her. And I think it just really brings that theme and the importance of interior peace.
Sure.
Okay. And with Father, Son, Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Let nothing disturb you. Let nothing frighten you. All things are passing. God only is changeless. Patience gains all things. Who has God wants nothing. God alone suffices.
Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. Saint Gianna, pray for us.